This podcast is hosted by Sheza Barbour, co-founder of Good Tree Institute, and joined by licensed therapist Archie Aquino and our resident scholar and founder, Dr. Nadia Qatranji.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Timeless Conversations with Good Tree Institute. I'm here again with Dr. Nadia Qatranji and Archie Aquino as we continue our story and delve into the surah of Surah Maryam. So in this episode, I think we're taking a little bit of a shift, and the surah shifts gears and focuses on Sayyidina Ibrahim. So Dr. Nadia, do you want to kick us off and continue on with this discussion?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And as you said, Shaza, now we are going to be going into Ibrahim alayhi salam and his story with his father. Remember, we mentioned that the surah is about the deen and the family, and we had Zakaria alayhi salam with his son Yahya, and then we had Maryam and her son Isa, and now we're having Ibrahim alayhi salam and his father. So let's listen to the conversation. This is a totally different one, and there is so much to learn from Ibrahim alayhi salam and how his approach was and why he took that approach. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, and mention in the book Abraham or Ibrahim. إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. He definitely was a man of truth, and he was a prophet. And then he says, إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ, when he said to his father, يَا أَبَتِ لِمَ تَعْبُدُ, oh my father, why are you worshipping? Why are you directing yourself to ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر, to something that does not hear and does not see? That's very straightforward, very clear, right? It just like does not have, there's no logic to worshiping. For them, it was very simple. They were worshiping idols. Like, how are you doing that? There's no logic in that. Why are you doing that? You're surrendering to something that does not hear and does not see. وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا, and does not benefit you, does not suffice you in any way, right? The ghaniya is to be enough in of itself. He is not, that whatever you're directing yourself to is not going to make you sufficient. We know logically it makes perfect sense. So he's just like, how are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And then he continues and he says, Ya abati, oh my father, inni qad ja'ani min al-ilm, definitely has come to me from knowledge, ma lam ya'tik, what did not come to you. Like, you don't have that access. Fattabi'ni. So that's why I have something that you don't have. And here I just want to focus a little bit on the word ilm. Ilm, remember the root word is alima, which is to mark. Like, it's something that you're accessing that actually has a proof. It's not just, just any kind of knowledge. No, ilm is when you do have something that is actual and that is a fact, that's factual. That's what ilm is. I know a lot of the times they translate it into science, but this is different. Ilm is when you have an understanding that is paired by a proof. So he said, I have that knowledge that you don't have. So that's why you need to follow me. فَاتَّبِعْنِي. Although I'm younger than you, but you need to follow me because I have that. أَهْدِكَ صِرَاطًا سَوِيًّا. If you follow me, I'm going to guide you and show you the way to a path that is balanced and even. Sawiya, remember, is to be balanced and even. So he's just like, I'm going to give you some path that is really, when you say something is sawi, that's like the best way that it can be. It's kind of like holistic. It takes care of everything. So that's how he started, right? It's good to look at, before we continue, it's good to look at some of how he's speaking, right? The first one that I want to, allude to is when he said, Ya abati. I didn't mention this. So ab is father. Ya, when he says, oh, my father, oh, ya abati. Usually you say ya abi. Oh, my father is ya abi. The e at the end is for me, my. But here, notice he's saying ya abati. The ta, when you add that ta, and kind of like you don't even say a full ya, it's to show some kind of like a level of closeness and intimacy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam is trying to be very, very emotional and intimate with his father. So he's saying, Ya abati, oh my father. So Ibrahim alayhi salam has really a very unique way in his approach.
Yeah, he's addressing his dad with a lot of gentleness, even though he might be coming at him with logic and information and clearly a conversation he wants to have with his dad. But he's approaching it very softly.
Exactly. So he's kind of like tapping into that love that is there between, a father and a son, and tapping into it and coming with that softness, especially knowing that he's addressing a topic that's not very easy. And he's coming at it with, as you said, there is a lot of logic in there. He's just like, he's stating fact after fact. Notice. It's like, okay, what you're doing really doesn't make any sense. Think about it. How can you surrender to something that does not really give you any benefit? And I have something that actually you have no access to. So he's stating a lot of facts here.
I don't know if that's soft enough. I mean, even though he's trying to be soft and he's trying to approach it gently, it's such a I don't know. It's a really a tough conversation to try to tell someone what they're doing and what they've always done for a long time is somehow incorrect. Like that, people don't want to hear that.
That is so true. That is so true. These kinds of conversations are very hard. And to your point, we don't know exactly. Like the Quran is conveying this aspect of ya abati, but it's just like showing that it's alluding to the aspect that there is that softness, that gentleness, there's that love. Like to me, the biggest part is like he's speaking into how much he cares about him and how much he loves him. And maybe there's like, you can imagine how he's being. You can imagine other things that he could, maybe we are not seeing. You kind of have to see through the word and to see the whole setting that this could have been with it to address, as you said, a very tough conversation. So far we're noticing like there's two things, right? There's that gentleness that he's bringing, but there's also very straight, logical, points that he's bringing.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the conversations I have with my kids. When I come at them with something, I have something on mind that I need to talk to them about, but then I'm like, hey, sweetie.
They know.
Yeah. It's like, I need to talk to you about something. But I start off with, sweetie, habibi,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like, even though you come at them with gentleness, if this is your kid and you're the parent, you're like, what is this? What is this buttering me up stuff? Like, what are you trying to do?
So, what's so funny? If you do that, you're just like, okay, you have something. And if you don't, well, at least be gentle when you're talking to,
Don't just blurt it out. At least soften the blow.
You do need the sandwiches anyway. You do need to make sure. And it's a very important thing to just be gentle, especially when it's a rough conversation. So that's very interesting. So definitely we want to delve into that, but let's finish what Ibrahim alayhi salam said. So we're just following through his conversation because there is a lot to learn in terms of how his approach is. We got 2 points, so let's see what else he's saying. And then he says, Ya abati, oh my father, la ta'bud ash-shaytan. Do not worship. And remember, the word abada denotes that softness and submission, and we use it usually as surrender. And when, of course, when you're surrendering to other things, a lot of the times it's kind of like when you look at the outward actions, that's what we call it worship. Like the rituals, we call it worship, right? But in the inner part, the abada is that surrender aspect. So both words can be used based on what you mean by this aspect. So here, Ibrahim alayhi salam, again, he's telling him, you're just like, you're directing yourself and doing all of these rituals to the shaitan, to the devil. And of course, this way it's an indirect thing, right? He's worshiping idols, but that's all part of kind of like the devil's plan in terms of deviating people from the truth and following that. So that's why he's kind of like getting to the core of it. You're just following something that is so far off from the truth. And even the word shaitan is so interesting, like, comes from shatana, which is to be distant. It's like you're off track when you follow that, and that because shaitan is off track. And then he says, Inna shaitana kana lirrahmani asiya. The devil has definitely been disobedient to the Rahman, to the most gracious and loving and compassionate. Notice the word Rahman is basically the name and the attribute Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been using for himself throughout the surah. Whether Rabb or Rahman, right? The kind of the caretaker and the one who restores you and takes care of you, or the one who is like most gracious, loving, and compassionate. He said, Shaitan has been like far off from Allah, who is the most gracious, but he just like deviated way off. Don't do that. These are facts. And then he says, Ya abati, oh my father. Again, notice how each conversation starts with that. Inni akhafu, I indeed fear, I definitely fear, an yamassaka adhabun min ar-Rahman, that a punishment, a torment from the Rahman can come to you, can touch you, even though he's Rahman. But when you're off, he wants out of his rahmah, he wants to bring you back. فَتَكُونَ لِلشَّيْطَانِ وَلِيًّا. So you would be a friend to the shaitan. You would be a friend or an ally to the devil. How are these? Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing that basically being far off is a consequence to that punishment, basically. And a lot of the times, out of a consequence of us not, like our actions, when our actions are out, a lot of the times it kind of like leads to going far off. It leads to not being able to see the truth. It leads to going the wrong direction. And that's here where this is about. You are responsible for your actions. When your actions and your choices that you make are not really aligned with reality and with the truth, a lot of the times you are going to reap the consequence of that and follow you won't see what truth is. And you just follow something wrong, and you just look, I'm not seeing that. Well, because you made those choices.
On the other side, like if I were his father, I'd be like, whoa, what are you talking about? I'm not worshiping the devil. What are you?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm worshiping other gods, not the devil.
We're going to see what his father is going to say. قال, his father said, أراغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم. So رغب is to seek a thing. It's kind of like you desire something. But when you use the preposition an means away from. So when you couple it and pair that with raghiba, it means I'm actually not desiring. I'm kind of like hating. I'm moving away from something. So he said, are you hating and moving away from my God, O Ibrahim? Notice, and to the point that you mentioned, Archie, he didn't say to him, hey, I'm not a friend to the devil. I'm not this. Why are you saying this?
Mm-hmm.
What did he say? He didn't even address any of his concerns. He didn't even say, well, what is the ilm, the knowledge that you've told me about? He didn't even talk about any of that.
He kind of flipped the argument on him. He said, oh, you're talking about me being far away from your God. Well, you're far away from my gods.
Yeah.
So the response has nothing to do. It tells you that he was not listening.
Yeah. He immediately took the defensive approach.
He wasn't ready to take it in. He was just like, no. He did not even engage in Ibrahim's argument.
Yeah. Well, he also told his dad, I have knowledge that you don't, so you need to follow me. And I don't think any parent likes to hear that from a child.
Totally.
Even an adult child.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. That's very true. And a lot of the times, again, I mean, you can be at any position and feel that who is this person to tell me that?
Right.
Whether you are a parent or whether you are a friend sometimes or whatever, you feel that you have a better status. Like with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad alayhi salam, a lot of the times people around him were like, well, why didn't it come to me? I know better. I am like this. I'm like, so a lot of the times this could be a reason to why people would be blocked from seeing the truth, from actually engaging with this conversation. So that is a very, very legitimate thing. Like, who are you to tell me what I am? And a lot of the times we as parents fall into that trap. I'm just like not even considering the possibility that my child is saying something that is true.
Or they just humor them, like, oh, okay, you know more than me. All right, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So he basically went and threatened him. لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ, he said, if you don't stop right now, stop doing this. He said, I'm gonna لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ, I will stone you. وَهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا, and leave me for a long time. I don't want to see your face. Just go. I don't want you. So notice how he's like, his response was very abrupt. There is no space for conversation. No, this can't go that way. If you're leaving me, go.
That's what happened when I told my parents I was converting. Instantly. You're not coming over. We will talk to you later, but you're uninvited to dinner. Don't come over now.
Yeah. And I think it's reasonable to understand this reaction, this first reaction, right? It's not easy for people to feel that, you abandoned the path that I've been basically, teaching you and walking you through, because it kind of like goes back to me and it says as if I am like, it invalidates all the process and work that I've done with you. That means it's about me, and it becomes about the parents. Like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah, you're
I didn't do
rejecting
the
me.
right job. You're rejecting me, and what I did is wrong. So it's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, because it even speaks to whether you're the parent or the loved one or whatever, that it's not about the logic. It's not about even the belief system. They really take all these things when you do something divergent than what they always planned or intended. They take it as you rejecting them personally.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a personal attack almost thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And again, as I said, I think that is a very expected human reaction. And if the person would have a different reaction, it would be something that is more like, you have to foster that environment to get a different reaction, especially from somebody who thinks that they are like more knowledgeable, since you're a father or something like that, or a parent, or whoever that is. It does require something different. So let's just look at the last thing that Ibrahim alayhi salam said, and then we'll pause here. So Ibrahim's response, he had two responses. We're just going to mention the first one and pause here. And he said, his response was, قال سلام عليك. He said, peace be unto you. سأستغفر لك ربي. I'm going to ask my caretaker to forgive you. إنه كان بي حفيا. He definitely was very gracious to me. I'm going to get back to this word in a little bit, but let's just pause here and let's just really address this from our end, and address how this is very, very important for us to learn, what is important for us to learn from.
Well, his response back, Ibrahim's response back, is interesting, because he doesn't engage in the tit for tat and back and forth and blah 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 blah. He doesn't escalate. He doesn't like match, where his dad's coming from, defensively attacking to him. He's just kind of like, okay, you know what? Peace. I am just going to walk away. I'm going to ask for forgiveness, but I'm not engaging in this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's very smart. Why, it's important to address why he did that, right?
Well, there's wisdom in that. Like
Yep.
when someone is in an emotional state, they're not going to argue logically. It's not going to be a logical argument at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can just, if you just put yourself in, I'm sure many of us, if not everybody, has had conversations or arguments with people, maybe not regarding belief systems, but just in general. And you get those reactions sometimes when people are just so escalated and so emotionally charged that you can't even come at them with anything because it's just going to be a downhill, like it's a downhill conversation from that point on. You just got to back off and be like.
And it's important to learn, right? I mean, it's important to learn when you notice that the person in front of you is resisting it and it's that they're not listening. And especially when they start bringing up like reactions that are not consistent with the conversational style, then this is not the right time or the right setting. You just have to stop.
Yeah, and it's not a time to be like, you're getting emotional. It's not the time to start talking down to them because they're in this emotional state.
If you really want a good outcome, that's not what you would do. That's not what you would do. You would definitely just calm down and just let it be.
I tell my anger management people because they always want to tell the other person, you need to calm down. And I'm like, how does that ever work? Because I know when anyone tells me I need to calm down, I don't want to calm down simply because they told me I need to calm down.
I get angrier.
Yeah.
That is so true. That is so true.
So what about that part where he says, I'll pray for you? Because these days, I mean, I can imagine, I've heard this from people and it just sounds like they're trying to be superior and it's condescending. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I wonder if his dad felt that way.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I agree. I mean, this is a part where I've experienced this many times where people would feel very offended when you tell them this, as if kind of like you're more affirming that you're right and they're wrong. And it's all coming from the aspect also of when you're just like saying something that's not the time for it. But I do believe that it's very important for us to be very culturally relevant and to understand what words land and what words don't land. Like you have to understand there are certain things. I mean, even I know there are many times where we use certain words that are not basically the traditional way, just because it lands wrong. And it's kind of like people are either numb to it or they get agitated by it or they get annoyed with it. So you have to be sensitive to these things. You have to understand the nature of the time and the people and the culture and to speak according to that and to be, not oblivious of that.
Yeah, and again, the tone is very important. Whether you're saying you're trying to be non-judgmental, but if you say something that in a way that sounds judgmental, the person's going to perceive you're being judgmental.
Totally. And I would even add another aspect to what you're saying, how you're saying it and all of that. Also, you have to understand the nature of the people in front of you or the person in front of you.
Yes.
Like some people require an extra level of softness. Some people actually require an extra level of confrontation. You have to know who these people are. Like for Ibrahim alayhi salam, his people, the area that he was from were very rough people, were very tough. It wasn't like you're not talking about, the areas that were, I just don't want to point any place or anything like that, but it's just like, I mean, the nature of the people is very, very important to consider. Like with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he spoke to Umar, he was like shaking him because Umar was tough, alayhi salam. Whereas in other places when Hatim came to him and he was like, from a very, comfortable place, he gave him his couch and his cushion to sit on, and he spoke to him in a very soft way, and he tried to soothe him and ease him. You have to know your people.
Yeah. Good example of that is in America. I grew up on the East Coast, and Maryland and Virginia and New York is where I spent my childhood. When I came to Arizona and I was speaking in the way that's appropriate for there, people were saying, "You're so aggressive. You're so confrontational. Like, why are you so blunt?" And because I'm dealing with people from California and Colorado,
That's true.
and they're just
Yep.
a little softer.
Yep. That's so true. That's so true. Yep.
So I wonder, like, for us in today's context, just from a practical perspective, instead of if you feel like saying, "Oh, I'll pray for you," sounds condescending and not the right approach, is that you just do it internally. Like you're
Yeah.
making dua, you're praying for them, but you're not explicitly telling them like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'll pray for you," or in that
Yeah.
way. So we're still
Yeah.
using the lessons from Ibrahim, but just applying it to maybe today's, or what you might feel is the right appropriate approach with who
Yeah,
you're
it
dealing
could
with.
be the right thing to say, but it's not gonna land the right way. So that's why
Yeah.
it's not the right thing to say. Although they
Mhm.
are correct words, they are true words, but it's not the right time for it, or it's not the right space. So don't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be that.
That's what's
Yeah.
more important anyway. The dua gets made,
Exactly.
not the
Right.
acknowledgement that you're making the dua.
Yeah.
That is true.
True.
Yeah, and this whole dynamic, to your point, Shaza, about that confrontation that Ibrahim alayhi salam did, is something that you might need to do in terms of your belief system, and you might need to do from in many other ways, in many other aspects, whether in any type of relationship, or any, whether work, whether family, whether, there are so many places where these kinds of confronting conversations need to happen, where there is a major deviation from the truth, a major deviation from what needs to happen, and it's just not happening. And we live at a very tough time where, in the past, it was even also a tough time where people would just like blurt out everything, and they just like criticize right and left, and things won't go well, and it just escalates, and people just cut off each other and leave. And this is still happening in a lot of places. But as a reaction, we also went to the other end, where we start just like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna avoid and not mention anything, and I'm just gonna keep a low profile and tolerate the problems. I know I'm a person like that. It's easier for me to tolerate rather than confronting and dealing with the consequence of the bursting of people in front of me.
Right. I mean, I definitely, that's how I feel too. And I mean, I know knowing when to use these tips, like what using this as an example is helpful, because so many times, like, people might come at you for advice, or they want to hear something, but they also don't want to hear the truth. They don't want you to tell them really what you see needs to stop. Or we shy away from it. Like I know I personally do. I don't know how to have these conversations really well when how to gauge the conversation or direct people to kind of get them to see what they need to see, what's getting in their way and what's stopping them, or what's sometimes blatantly wrong. Like, this is wrong. You have to stop doing this.
And it gets really uncomfortable when it seems like they want you to be in agreement with them.
Yes.
Like they're looking for somebody to support them in their whatever they're believing. And if you're like, I don't really believe that.
Right.
Like, you want to be supportive, but at the same time, you're like, I don't want to lie.
Yeah. Like, I don't agree. I don't agree with that tactic, with what you think, with what you're doing. These are hard conversations, So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think using this as an example, as a framework is,
Yeah.
it's good. Like, we need these frameworks to kind of figure out,
Yeah.
well, how do we have these conversations? How do we have hard conversations with our loved ones,
Yeah.
with people that we,
And I think it goes both ways, whether you are somebody whose style is just confronting and just jump at it and just say, okay, well, here's what it is. You want to hear it? Here's what it is. Or you're somebody who's just like, no, everything's fine. You're good. Yeah, I agree. Whether your style is this or that, these two don't work.
Right.
Unless if the person in front of you is really somebody who is really willing to be uncomfortable and willing to take any criticism from you, it won't work. It's very rough. It's not easy. So to your point, the question comes, it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do if somebody comes to me and wants to hear the truth, and I'm not going to kind of like be avoidant in this conversation or be very harsh? How do I do this?
Yeah, it's like people only think that those are the only two options, right? And there's option C.
That's the one that we love all the time. Yeah.
So yeah, you can still be straight, but you don't have to be blunt.
Yeah.
Right? You can still be straight, but you can simultaneously be kind.
Like Ibrahim, right? Just start with like things that you acknowledge. A lot of times it could be just acknowledging the fact that I could see how hard it is for you. Acknowledge their space, acknowledge where they're at, like put yourself in their shoes. And I think the biggest is like, well, if I'm asking, how do I want people to talk to me?
Yes. That's the easiest way. It's like, the golden rule. How would you want to be treated? You know, that's what you should be doing.
Yep.
So far what I'm hearing is like you start with gentleness, you start with acknowledging, their feelings or what they're going through or what their process, kind of like where they're at. And then we move on to...
if it's easy for you, it doesn't mean it's easy for if it's so straightforward and clear for you, it doesn't mean it's straightforward for the other person. Because guess what? There might be things that are so easy for that person and you're struggling with. So you have to understand that these are personal things that it's not like universally, oh, come on, this is so simple. You can't do that. You don't know people's backgrounds. You don't know people's fears, what the blocks that they put for themselves. So you have to understand their space. That is a very, very important one to start with.
Yeah, and lets people be more open if they feel like you're understanding them first before you decide you want to tell them something that's corrective.
That is true. And to add to it, if you're somebody who has a stake in this aspect, like if you're the other side of it, or you're kind of like annoyed with it, or you feel being the victim or whatever, you're already charged. So whatever you're going to say, if you're charged, you're going to say it's going to land as very kind of like judgmental.
Yeah.
So for you to be really understanding them, you cannot come loaded with your anger or with your annoyance with them. Because, let me tell you, I even suffer from what this person is saying. Like what you're saying, yes, that's true. That's not going to work. You need to resolve your own judgment and your own issue before you come to them with an advice. You really cannot do that.
Yeah. People pick up on that.
Exactly. And it becomes a fight. It becomes like you are fighting for your own suffering from them. You're not actually helping them. You're dealing with your own issue. So it becomes about you, not about them. And you got to acknowledge that.
So what I'm hearing I'm trying to really solidify this into like a cohesive framework is like, you have to first also know who you're dealing with, where they're at, acknowledge them, see where they're coming from. But then there's the element of your side, right? Like, how do you have to be before you have these conversations, So, you have to, like, what's happening on your end, understanding, and then what's happening on their end to kind of create the space for a fruitful dialogue, if it is a dialogue, Like here with the story of Ibrahim and his dad, it wasn't really a dialogue. It was kind of like, forget it. I don't like his dad just rebutted and was like, whatever. And Ibrahim walks away and is like, okay, peace. Yeah.
But I think there's more kind of an implied message here to expect the defensiveness. Expect that your first attempt to convey the message isn't going to be the end-all be-all acceptance you're not going to win the argument just
Right.
because you put the argument out there.
And it's
That's
logical
awesome.
and
That's awesome.
exactly. And so then when that happens, you have to almost expect that you have to walk away with peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like not be this like I am going to win this argument. I'm going to tell you, X, Y, and Z.
This
Not
point,
one and done. Yeah.
yeah, this point is so important. Like for me, it was like it made a huge difference in several relationships that I had with people, where I always come in with like I'm gonna expect the kindness and I'm gonna expect the acceptance and all of that, and then I get hit back with a resistance or a criticism or something, and it bothered me every single time until I learned, hey, like the pattern from this person, it's going to be that resistance or that criticism. Just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
You're being annoyed with it is not doing anything and is not changing that person, and is not like it's making me suffer. So the moment you start like, okay, that's the reaction that's going to come, I know this is what the person is doing. I'm not saying, I mean, it's up to you. If you don't have to interact with these people, you don't have to, but don't expect something different than what is going to come out of them.
Some people come to you and they just want to tell you something, and they want some feedback from you. Maybe you could just ask, like, do you want me to just listen, or do you really want some feedback? Like,
Beautiful.
how can I help you? And let them decide what they want, and that way we're not guessing.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, you would. I think asking them and taking permission from the person, as you said, I mean, it kind of like lets down the guard. So okay, I'm expecting something here. Asking that, it's like, do you want to hear it?
Yeah, it gives them a second to decide. Right? They have an element of choice.
Mm-hmm.
If they proceed, then they have to accept that they said, yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah, and by the
that.
way, even
I think that's just like in nowadays, it's such great advice to give somebody. And just, I don't know, in the context of the way that we live today is just because some people just really, they just want to vent and they don't want to listen to, or they're not ready for it. It's not that they don't want to sometimes, but maybe not today. Maybe today they just want to let it all out and vent. And then tomorrow they might call and be like in a more calmer state and be like, okay, maybe today I'm ready to listen to advice or opinions or,
We call that co-regulation now. When somebody is dysregulated and they need support, like they want somebody to validate their dysregulation, and then that helps them to let go of it, and then they can calm down after that.
that is so true. And I learned this lesson from my kids, like always giving me feedback. She's like, okay, I didn't really ask for anything. I just want you to listen. So I learned if I want to mention something, I have to ask, like, do you want me to say something? So with that aspect, even if you notice something and you want to mention it, that's the same approach. It would be the same approach. Hey, there's something I want to talk about that may not be comfortable. Like, would you want me to talk about it? Can we address something or no? It always works better. Always.
Yeah, it's better than the alternative, which is, look, I got to tell you something, and then just launch into it.
I know, right?
And the person's like, ah.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
So then here's the other part of the question, or another scenario, right? What if they didn't come to you, but you see like what they're doing, what others are doing, and like how it's impacting everyone around them, or they just keep denying the truth, when you feel like, is there a time to interject and say something to kind of change that course where that you see happening? And then how do you do that?
You kind of have to customize that to the individual. Some people are a little bit easier to talk to than others, and in those cases, it's a little bit easier to just pull them aside and say, hey, there's something I want to tell. I think I need to talk to you about this. And do you have, ask them, are they ready to have that kind of conversation? But if it's someone who's very defensive, then you really have to time it. Like timing is so important.
Yeah, I remember even once. I'm a person. I used to be like, it's very hard for me to take any criticism, and I would just like shut down if somebody would do that to me. Until one time, I remember I was talking, and the person was kind of like, you know, telling me stuff, and I was very, very annoyed. And the person was like, "Well, I mean, I can't, don't expect just to hear the cool stuff and think that you can grow. If you're committed to that, and I am committed to my growth, and I'm committed to kind of like noticing where my mistakes are, well, you just have to be willing to hear that." And that shifted things for me. I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm ready to hear it now. I just needed to get that introduction, let's put it this way, like that aspect of, okay, well, this is an uncomfortable conversation. This is not something that's pleasant to you, but it will help you if you're willing to hear it. A lot of the times also sharing, like, again, if they are willing, you just have to kind of like take that permission. It's very, very important to do that. And then sharing yourself, how it is for you, so that they know this is not like, I am not this awful person. It's something that happens for us human beings, and we all deal with these kinds of things. It really, really helps to understand that.
And it also helps to kind of like set it up with a difficult person. You can always ask them like, I'm your friend, right? Or I love you, right?
Exactly.
I always try to help you, and I'm always trying to encourage you, right? And then they're like, yeah, this is a sales tactic too, get them to say yes a bunch of times. So they're in this agreeing mode. And then I'm always trying to do what's in your best interest. So, yeah. So then please take this in that spirit. Like,
that's beautiful.
I want to tell you something in that spirit.
Yeah. And I want to reiterate, just because it's very important, you only can have this conversation when you're not charged from here. Like when this is not something that you have a stake in, like in terms of you're suffering from it. If you're still dealing with it internally and you still have a lot of like reaction to it, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You got to deal with yourself first. Otherwise, you're going to come off as judgmental, making wrong. It's not going to be helpful.
So you have to be confident in your position. You have to be calm, regulated. You have to take that responsibility of being the one who's going to be non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Even before you start. And you also have to have a very clear idea of why are you even having this conversation? Is it to help this person, or are you trying to win?
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, and I for me, I remember, again, with our interactions, we have these kinds of things all the time as life happens. I had to stop and kind of like understand that the person who is doing what they're doing is not doing it personally. It's not something like attacking me. It's not personal to me. It's their problem that I have to be willing to just be dissociating myself from, and understand that they would love to change it. It's not that they're just like so happy about it. So me reacting to it is really exacerbating their problem. So me having to clear myself out of this first, it was a very, very, very important step. So I'm not anymore being annoyed and charged and reacting every single time. Then there is an opportunity for what we are mentioning. That needs to happen first. You can't step over this. You can't go. I'm emphasizing on it because it's really very, very important. If you go thinking that you're so right and you're so hurtful and you're so hurt by this person and you need to address it, it's not going to work.
Right. It turns into a conflict where it's oppositional.
Exactly. And it seems very clear, very logical. You're right, they're wrong. Why isn't it working? Well, guess what? We human beings don't work this way. We don't operate this way. We don't operate as, right, of course, I see the truth. Okay, I'm just going to jump into it. The whole Quran is about this aspect. Listen to his father. Like, he's mentioning very logical aspects. Why didn't he say yes? Well, because it's way more complicated than just seeing the truth.
Yeah.
Our minds are the least although our minds are very powerful, but they're the least controlling piece of who we are. What controls us are these, like, that ego, that self. That's what's driving.
Yep.
You just can't change minds without also changing a heart.
You want, yeah.
Yeah, but they
That's
go
the
together.
axis. That's the axis, exactly. The mind is subservient to what drives you, what drives the heart. It's subservient. It actually helps and serves. So logic, despite the fact that it makes so much sense, believe me, that's not the reason why people do or don't what they do or they don't.
Yeah. There's just a little bumper sticker phrase that I heard in a training last year, and it's so easy, but it really makes the point. You got to connect before you correct.
It's beautiful.
Without connection, you can't make correctional conversations. It doesn't work.
Yep. So, I mean, if we don't have anything else about this, I just want to kind of like address the rest of the ayahs that basically, because what's so beautiful about them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and basically addressing what Ibrahim alayhi salam was dealing with. So here, notice something where we left. Like first, let's look at Ibrahim's response, where he said, "Qala salamun alayk." He said, "Peace be to you. I will ask my caretaker to forgive you." So that's the reaction we've been talking about. But look at this last piece. This is a part that I just want us to really ponder on for a minute. He said, "Innahu, certainly he, my caretaker, has been, kana bi hafiya." The word hafiya is to exaggerate and go beyond measure, right? There is, of course, other meanings to it, but this is the one that we want to address here. Do you feel that for yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do you think, oh, well, it's because it's Ibrahim, he's the prophet, or it should be a saint, and then Allah will take care of you? We are so far off from this concept. We don't treat ourselves as like how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or treat how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. We don't see it as real as it is, or the reality of it. And I just want us to really let this sit in with us.
People are so quick to point out when they think that God or Allah is not with us. Then when they feel abandoned, they're quick to point that out.
Yeah. And they feel abandoned, but they're not abandoned. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just like, that's your perception. I never left you. I'm always with you. I'm always there. So, and to this point, Ibrahim alayhi salam was you could imagine how disappointed he was, right? Mm-hmm. He wanted his father to be on the same path with him, to believe like he did, to see the truth, to kind of like experience this. It was very hard. It's very heartbreaking to see that your father, your family is not on the same page with you. Very rough. So he said to him, he kind of like said it, and I'm just going to leave you. أعتزلكم. I will leave you. Azala is to put aside. I'm just going to leave you. وَمَا تَدْعُونَ, and everything that you are calling and invoking besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm just going to leave all of that. And I'm going to call my caretaker. وَأَدْعُو رَبِّي. And then he says, Asa, maybe. And this maybe over here is not maybe. He knows. Allah akuna, that I will not, I know that I'm not going to be, due to calling him, bidu'a'i rabbi shaqiyya, miserable. I'm going to just like look to him, and I'm going to ask him to take care of me in this heartbreak that is happening to me. Mm-hmm. In this abandonment that I had to leave my own family, leave the people who are with me. And because of that, partition that has happened, and his father just like telling him leave. He says, okay, I'm going to leave, and I'm just going to call my caretaker. He'll take care of me. Maybe I won't be miserable.
That's so much nicer than, I don't need you.
There you go.
I don't need your gods or you.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Right. And again, it just shows you how real his relationship with Allah is. It circles us back to Zakaria. Remember the first ayahs that we had where he said, I was not miserable because I called you, Ya Rabbi. It's kind of like confirming it again. This is, I'm inviting you, my Father, to something that's so real to me that I'm touching, that I'm experiencing, that I'm enjoying. That's why he wanted, that's why he's so heartbroken. And I know this relates a lot to a lot of people who, part away from their family because of that, and because their family is not just like, I know a lot of families are so gracious and they kind of like take it, they are very accepting, but a lot of others are also they have a very hard reaction in the beginning. And, I understand that, but it's very hard for the person.
Yeah, it's almost like the protocol for many converts that this is going to happen. You will need to call in the law because your family will kind of separate themselves from you, or you might have to separate yourself from them. But like, it's not uncommon, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Kind of expect that. If you expect the worst, you will know. Like that's very, and you understand. Like you kind of understand it's hard for them. So, and then this is teaching a person who is in this position. If you are somebody who's like, okay, this is where I'm at, like learn from Ibrahim. He turned to Allah. And this is where I want to show you something. It's beautiful. Look at Allah's response. Look what he says. فَلَمَّا اعْتَزَلَهُمْ. So when he left them and abandoned, like he just like departed from them, وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, and whatever they are worshipping besides Allah and surrendering to besides Allah, look what he said. وَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. We granted him, we gift him Ishaq, Isaac, and Yaqub and Jacob. So Ishaq was his son, who came to him despite the fact that he was very, very old, and his wife was very, very old. It wasn't even possible for them to have children. Allah gave him Ishaq, and in his life, Ishaq alayhi salam had Yaqub. So he had his grandchild. He was in his late, like very, very old. And then he says, not only that he gave him these two children, وَكُلًّا جَعَلْنَا نَبِيًّا, and he made both a prophet. And of course, even his grandchild, Yusuf alayhi salam, became a prophet. Look at this. Not only this, all the prophets that came after him were from his descendants. Every single prophet who came after Ibrahim alayhi salam was from his progeny. What's this telling us?
I mean,
like, go ahead.
I'm just thinking it's such a beautiful gift for such a sorrowful heartbreak. Like Allah's telling him, like, okay, you might have to part ways with your dad, but I'm going to give you nations and tribes and like people that are coming from you, like family, like other family, to kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a gift. I don't want to say make up for it, but kind of from what you're experiencing, like the heartbreak that you're experiencing. Like, don't worry, I got you.
So beautiful, right? So beautiful. It's like, your father didn't come, but here you go. Here you go. Not only believing prophets, not only believing. Yeah, this is the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why whenever you're hurt and whenever you're have anything that's kind of like you're dealing with, come to Allah. He's the most generous. That's the lesson that we need to learn. Come to him. He will never let you down. He will never let you down. You're going to be overwhelmed by his generosity and love. Yeah. So, and then he says, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُم مِّن رَحْمَتِنَا, and we granted them and we gifted them, all of them, from our mercy. See, we're just like what we're talking about. وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ عَلِيًّا, and we made for them a tongue a mention that is true sidq and aliyah, that's high. Like they had that ability to kind of like be in a position that is very respected, that is true, that they were credible basically. Like they had a tongue of truth, and that was kind of like very, very trusted and high, and people accepted them. And of course, as we just said, they became like every single truth that came out of afterwards came from them. Yeah, so that's the gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives when you do your best and things don't work. That's what happens.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I first converted, people are always telling me, when you lose something or if something's taken from you, maybe it's because you're going to get something better.
Yeah.
You never lose when you are with Allah and when you deal with Allah. You never lose. You always win. Even if it seems not the case in the beginning, just hang in there. Just hang in there. I mean, I've seen that in my life, throughout my life, over and over and over. Things would look so horrible, and I just turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just say, and then the way that He brings it would just like astonish me. It's like, subhanAllah, I never thought it's going to be that, like that. Yeah.
Wow. Again, another deep episode. So like a lot to sit with and take on. But, again, at the end of this episode, we have a lot of questions we want to ask the audience in terms of their own self-reflection. And, the point of this episode is really having those confronting conversations and knowing when to do them, how to do them, using them as a framework. So here are the questions that we're going to ask our audience this week to ponder on. So, do you always take on, one, the blunt approach to people when you're having conversations, where you go up to people and tell them the truth without caring? Or two, do you avoid confrontations and those kind of conversations? You like tolerate so you just don't have to deal with the backlash. Then from that, so like, how's this working for you from either perspective? Are you accomplishing what you are intending? Then what is the collateral damage for being this way? What is the impact it's having around you and how it's impacting yourself too? From either way, being, again, the taking on the blunt approach to people or the avoiding confrontation perspective. And then look at your intention. Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you making your point at the cost of hurting the other person's feelings or making them feel defensive? Is the message really received if the other person resents how you deliver it? So check your intention on why you're even having these confrontational conversations or how things are developing. Then we wanted to leave the audience and kind of, with the framework that we've been discussing is like, how do you work through this? How do you change your way of dealing with these conversations? And one of the things that we've discovered, through this episode is that, these actions are the same, whether you're avoiding people or you're being that blunt person. So here are some tips. See if they are ready to actually hear it. If they aren't, then wait and pray for them to have that opening for them. Ask for their permission to offer your message and feedback. Just ask first and see what they come back with. Take into consideration what would make the other person's perspective. And don't just say the message the way you want to say it. What would make them, what would make what you have to say valuable to that person? How would it benefit them? Acknowledge their perspective before you say yours. And then tell them actually what your intention is, why you want to tell them the message, that it's coming from a place of love and caring for them. It's not a place of judgment or disrespect. And then when you have that permission, like if they give you that, if they grant you that permission, right? Some may say, no, I don't want to talk about this right now. But if you get that permission, then just say what makes sense for the other person. Speak at their level in a way that makes it meaningful for them, in a non-judgmental way. So I hope these tips, are useful for all of us in having so many different types of conversations that we encounter with, loved ones, family, friends, and even coworkers. Like, these are just hard conversations to have, but, especially with conversations regarding, belief systems and truths, like what we saw was, with Ibrahim and his dad. These are great framework. I mean, he provides us with a great framework, and analyzing the way he dealt with it is so useful to us. Anybody have anything else to add or share besides those?
Always, I would like to leave this final kind of thing to remember is you're always trying to take care of the person. You don't want to ruin a relationship for the sake of winning an argument.
Yeah, the other thing that I also would love to add is when a lot of times, because I remember catching myself so many times doing that, when you're just like, yeah, I'm just coming, it's not about me, it's about you, I care about you, but inside you either want to win or you either are hurt and want them to change so badly. It doesn't land. If that's the case for you, just either don't say it or say, hey, listen, I'm being judgmental right now. I'm so sorry. Don't, as Archie said, people feel it. I did that many times where it's just like, yeah, I'm coming from this and I care about you. And that's not true. It's not true, So don't say something that you don't mean.
Yeah, don't be fake like that. That's annoying. Oh my gosh. People have this, there's a common trend now where people go, I'm not trying to argue, but, and then they argue.
That
is true. Yeah. Right.
Well, thanks everybody. Inshallah, we'll see you again next week as we continue on the story of Surah Maryam.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
If you like listening to our conversation about the Quran, imagine how much more you would get out of participating in a live conversation about the Quran with Dr. Nadia and a room full of people engaging with the Quran. Join us at our next in-person Seeds of Wisdom retreat, online with our weekly Quran and Me sessions, or for the youth at one of our Camp Z retreats.